Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maggie, and this is Grab a Cuppa. Today I have tea in a cup that came from Leavenworth, Washington. I'm drinking Stash Mango Passion Fruit. You grab a cup of whatever you want to drink, and let's just sit and chat. So this is my first episode of Grab a Cuppa, and on this podcast, I would like to talk about knitting and fiber arts. I have a wonderful partner. We've been together for a while, but he does not like to talk about knitting. That is not something that is in his group of favorite things. So it's kind of hard, to find people to talk about knitting with. I live in a small town in Oregon. I moved here in July of last year from Washington State, where there were so many little local yarn shops that you could pretty much always find somewhere to go and sit and knit and chat. Just look around and have a great time. There is a local yarn shop close to me, but it's like 15 miles away, and it's small and crowded, and there is not a place to sit and chat, and it's not the same type atmosphere. I miss that. The yarn shop that I used to go to all the time, there was a table, and it was a large dining table in the middle of the shop, and chairs everywhere around it, and people could just go in there and, of course they could get little lessons from the shop owner, but they could also just sit and chat and knit, and they had spinning lessons and they had knitting lessons, and it was just a wonderful, comfortable place to get together with people who like to knit or crochet or whatever it was that you did. Thanks to COVID, it closed down. In a way, I guess you could say it was due to that, but they had reopened for several months, and then it wound up being that she had to close down, and it was really sad because I really missed the place. And that was my only outlet for knitting friends after my best friend moved across state, where she was just too far. Now she's like 6 hours away, and we message back and forth, but I miss our little trips to the yarn shop together, to the thrift shop together, just her coming over and us grabbing a cup of whatever. I would make tea, I would make coffee, and we would just grab a cup, watch TV or listen to the TV and knit together and talk about what was going on. Usually Outlander was on TV. We had a cup of tea and we just knit. And I miss that. And I want that again. And not knowing too many people here outside of work, I'm really, I guess, filling in the knitting friendship with you guys. So welcome to the show. Grab a cuppa, and let's talk about what I would like this podcast to be like. What made me think of doing it is just this last week, my partner saying, "You realize that I have no idea what you're talking about." And of course, I was trying to talk about some knitting that I was doing. Also, I was looking for yarn because I watch two podcasts mainly, and that's Wool Needles and Hands with Taylor Earl. I think that's the title of it. And I watch Needles at the Ready with Kevin and Ray. Those are my two favorite. And they mentioned other podcasts on there, and I went on and looked at them, but I haven't really watched them yet because I haven't been watching either one for too long. So I wanted to catch up and see. There's several that I do have on my radar to watch, but I haven't watched them yet. I saw it because I've been watching back episodes of Needles at the Ready, and Kevin was doing dishcloths from Pearl Soho. So I went looking in my closet because there's a huge one there that has, I want to say, 5 or 6 boxes of worsted weight and bulky yarn. One box of bulky and the rest is worsted weight. There's a little closet to my left that has probably 6 or 7 boxes. That's all cotton, sock, and DK weight yarns. Really need to use the yarn that I have in my closets. I did make a couple of purchases this last week. Not this last week. Since Christmas. Yeah, so a little over a month now. For some specialty yarn for certain projects. That was bought with intent. So I have those. But just looking for my cotton yarn, I was like, oh my God, I have all of this stuff. I have sock yarn that I've picked up here and there when I'd go to a new yarn shop or whatever. And then I have sock yarn that came, that's Knitology. It came in the Knit Crate subscription because for a long time I was subscribed to that for about a year. Maybe a little over a year. I didn't even knit socks. I wanted to knit socks, and each month I would get enough to knit socks, and I would get patterns for socks, and I would try, and I would get so far, and I didn't want to knit socks anymore. I was doing cuff down socks, which I've learned I hate doing. And I was doing them one at a time. So the first time I tried to make socks, I made one sock that did not fit at all anybody in my household. And that became my Dobby sock. So my house help was freed at that point. Then I finally learned in the last couple months how to do 2 at a time socks on the magic circle. I think that's what you call it. Anyway, I do 2 at a time socks. I made a pair of socks for myself. They were a little bit big, but I used a customizable sock pattern that's toe up. It's on YouTube. And I went too big. Then I made my partner a pair of socks, and I made my dad a pair of socks. Now I'm making a pair of socks for my youngest child, who has a 15.5 size shoe foot. That's a chore. We won't go there right now. Today I'm not going to show a lot of things that I'm working on. Oh my gosh, I have whips after whips. I've got hats, I've got sweaters, I've got socks. I've got 4 pairs of socks cast on now, and one pair, seriously, I think I'm gonna rip out, but I'll show you next time. The yarn is just awful. It feels like elastic cord, and I'm not gonna like that on my foot. But the main thing is, yes, I want to talk about knitting. I want to talk about yarn. I want to talk about dyeing. I want to talk about spinning. I have drop spindles. I've got a spin wheel. I've got a 2 electric wheels. I've got 2 different sizes of electric wheels. I want to get into that. So I thought that instead of just talking to myself while I sit on my bed and knit and watch podcasts on YouTube of knitting, why can't I talk to a camera and knit? Spin, whatever I want to do. So there's really not any rhyme or reason to this other than I went looking for cotton yarn. I'm going to do something with this light. Maybe that'll help. There we go. I'm still going to have a shadow. I don't have a whole lot of light in here. Sorry. Maybe my setup will get different over time and it'll be better. But I went looking for cotton yarn to do dishcloths. And I found all those boxes of yarn, which is wonderful. But what am I going to do with it all? So, it's February 12th, 2023. And I'm going to find a pattern and use up my yarn. Let's see how many I can do by the end of the year. First thing I did was, don't know why it was in that box, but it was in that box, was a skein of the Lion brand, what is it called? One Hat Wonder. I don't know if you can see that. This one just happened to be Big Bird. Found that this morning. So I knit him this morning. So on the back of the skein is the pattern. I just soaked it and now I've got it blocked on a balloon. I think it was Kevin from Needles at the Ready said to block your hats on a balloon. So much easier. So there we go. It's on a balloon. It's the Knit the Big Bird hat on the back. It's a beginner thing. Lion brand yarns put these out. I found this one on clearance at some point. It was in that box. This is a worsted acrylic. I think it's acrylic. I'm not really seeing polyester. It's 100% polyester yarn. The pattern, it made kind of a small hat because I had this much left over. It's kind of said it was 2.5 ounces, 95 yards of yarn, and I followed the pattern directly, and that's how much I have left. So that wasn't very useful there. Wish I hadn't have decreased and tied it off. I would have just kept going a little bit. I would have cast on more stitches, whatever. But I have a couple of friends that just had grandchildren. So that's one project down. So now what I'm going to do is I made myself a project book. I just used a clip art picture that I found online and laminated it, and I had some disc journal disc, bound journal disc. These are stickers I got. I like to do junk journaling, so I have different things around. But I have my little knitting project planner. I'll put, this says yarn stash, but what I'm doing is I'm putting a piece of yarn of things that I've made. I'm putting a piece of that yarn on here. and writing down what yarn it was and what the color was and where I got it. Because I found that if I didn't put where I got fisherman's wool, but I did put where I got the soft and sleek yarn bee. I found that sometimes I make something and I want to get some more of that yarn, and then I don't have any idea what the color was or where I got it or anything like that. So that's what I'm using my yarn stash pages for. And then I have, if I can get there, I have yarn wish list pages, handmade gift trackers, project planners. So I'm doing a temperature blanket, which I started the 1st of January. Saw the pattern I got from a yarn store that I visited whenever I went to go see some of my grandchildren. And it was all Premier yarns. So you could get the pattern from the store for free, and it had all the colors there. So I brought it home, and I did go through my worsted weight boxes, and I found colors that were very similar to what was on the pages. So in case you didn't know, a temperature blanket is just something that you cast on a certain amount of stitches. In this case, it was 242 stitches, and then you knit back a row. But you go by the highest temperature it was that day. So I have an app on my phone for local weather. I think that day was pretty cold, but it was in the 30s. So there's a certain color that you use from, like, in certain temperature ranges. Say like a really deep blue or purple or whatever you want to use for like 20 to 30. And then it goes from 30 to 39 or however they do it. It's so different. But you cast on with whatever color it calls for the temperature of the first day of the year. You cast on, you work your way back. And then the next day is you knit 2 rows of that temperatures. So like if the first day is 27 degrees and it's a blue, you start with the blue. And if the next day is, say, 34 degrees and it's kind of a purple color, then you change the color to a purple and you knit right side and then back on the wrong side. So every day is 2 rows of that color. So that's on there. So it also has, the start date and the finish date. So, of course, I'm not going to finish that yet, but you can make it go for, if it's long enough after 3 months and that's all you want, then you can stop after 3 months or do 6 months or a year. 242 stitches, it's pretty wide. I would say I have a day bed and it fits across there pretty good. So that's like a twin size mattress. Excuse me. It doesn't hang off the edges, but it's nice to like throw. Sorry, I look off whenever I'm thinking or I close my eyes. So I'm trying not to close my eyes, but I'm not looking at anything over there. I'm just thinking. I have to see because already it's about like this and I'm about a week or so behind on it. My intent was to catch up every weekend, and then I went on a cast on flurry, so I've got like 10 different whips cast on. I work on something and then I get bored and then anyway, but my intent is I'm doing some Hermione's everyday socks. I cast those on the 9th of this month. So it'll be, I have a sweater. The Calliope sweater is a DK sweater. I cast that on January the 14th. I have custom socks for my youngest child that I started on the 4th of this month. So that's what I'll do is, as I work through the box of yarn that I have, I'll put a sample of yarn in the yarn stash. Probably not going to be able to remember where I got that yarn. Some of it's marked, like the sock weight yarn. If it's Knitology, I can put Knit Crate. But I'll go in and make a project page for the Big Bird hat because that's one that I finished. So the whole point of showing you my project book is each project that I get finished, like the hat here, I will write it down on the project book and we'll see how many different projects I can fill this journal up with, because these are some pretty big discs and it can fill out pretty quick. Also in here I have a sewing section, which I have some material here because it's like a fabric swatches, so I can cut pieces. I did that little piece of coffee material is this right here. I made a bag. I don't have the bag right here. It's in the other room, but it's a bag like this. And I've got pieces cut out like that for every size. This is a small drawstring bag that I sewed together for a project bag. I'm not professional. This one looks very good. I took my time with it. I did do a bucket bag. This is from Can Do Patterns off Etsy. I did a bucket bag that looks horrid for my first bucket bag, but I didn't take my time. So as long as I take my time, I'm doing great. This I have socks in. So that's my plans. We're going to work through the box. We're going to put it in the book. And we're going to talk about the different yarns. If I like it, if I don't like it, what am I going to make out of it? Help me find a pattern. Just stuff that your best friend would sit on the sofa and watch a movie and drink some tea and you would discuss with them. The other thing is I have so much in this box. I don't know if I can lift it up and show it to you any at all, but this is just one box right here. And all the boxes are pretty much like the same. This side is mostly sock yarn. This side's mostly cotton. I think I'm going to be doing a whole lot of dishcloths, which I have done one already. So since I found all of that cotton and I found this, I did do a dishcloth. So that might go in as a finished project. So that's two things that I did out of that box because I pulled them out of the box at the same time. So there, I need to make a note. Put the dishcloth and the Big Bird hat in the book. Big Bird hat and dishcloth in the book. I did Big Bird today, which is Super Bowl Sunday, so this will be up later. No, I'm not watching the Super Bowl. We decided to get rid of cable. Now I can't watch the Super Bowl, but that's okay. The dishcloth was done yesterday. No, it was done the day before. It was done on Thursday. Those two projects were I did them like I started the hat probably about 10 o'clock this morning and finished around noon, 1 o'clock. It's like something like 4 o'clock in the afternoon now. Um, the dishcloth, I started Thursday night. I was watching podcast, and I don't know if any of you have ever watched Needles at the Ready podcast, but I did that dishcloth probably about 3 or 4 hours, because I want to say that I watched an entire podcast and part of another one. They usually run around 1.5, 2 hours, so somewhere around 2 or 3, at least 3, maybe 4 hours it took me to do that one. Let's see, what else? Today's just going to be kind of a quick day as far as just what I'd like to share with you. And the theme of our podcast right now is going to be working through my yarn and emptying my boxes. If I don't know anybody that I would like to give things to, I would like to donate them or sell them. I don't know. A lot of my stuff does get donated. I usually just like send it into a children's hospital or something, or take it down to one of the local churches and just drop it off. So I do like to try to donate things that are superwash. Maybe I can start an Etsy store and just throw things up in there as I finish them. That way, something I do want to touch on is what they call yarn snob. I am not a yarn snob. I love the indie dyed yarns. I love dyeing yarn myself. So if I say it's a one-off, if I don't know where it came from, I don't know. I probably dyed it. I did dye several things a few years back. I love dyeing. I do. I wish I could do it all the time. But it can get a little expensive, and I understand how expensive it gets. But y'all, I cannot pay $30 and $40 for one skein of yarn. I don't care if it's intent buying. I don't care if it's for a special occasion or it's one time. Yeah, I can do that. I have a hard time paying less than $20 a skein for yarn. I think, let me turn this off completely. That made it really dark. Sorry. Don't be afraid to knit with what you can get. Don't let anybody intimidate you and make you think that you have to buy that indie dyed yarn, or you have to buy that certain kind of yarn, or you can't knit with anything but pure wool, or you can't knit with anything but this or that. If I find a yarn that I want to try, I get online and I look around and see if I can find it the cheapest place I can find it. I'll check webs. I'll check Amazon. I'll check KnitPicks. Those are just some off the top of my head that I'll check. Sometimes I just put it in the Google search, the type of yarn that I'm looking for, if I'm looking for a certain type, and let that bring up where it is that's cheaper. Yarnsub.com, I use that too. So I'll put in the yarn that it's calling for on a certain pattern and see what the closest substitution is. Because with everything that's going on, and as expensive as it is just to buy or rent a house, gas prices, how much food is, it's a little ridiculous to me to be a yarn snob. You find those yarns that you like, that are cheaper and that work for you, use them. There are some that I found that are very like splitty. And it's not even like, you can be using blunt knitting needles and just knitting along, and all of a sudden every time you put your needle in, it just splits right through. And then there's some that's not. And then there's some expensive yarns that are that way. And then there's some that's not. And it's just, you do you. If you can go pay $26 to $40 for 100 gram skein of yarn, more power to you. I do for very special occasions. Most of the time when I go to a yarn shop, if I want some of that very special yarn, I'm going to go to the clearance area first. They all have a clearance area. It's either things that are that are discontinued, or it's not the right time of year, or what have you. They're gonna have a clearance area. And I tend to shop that area first. That's one reason I got the spinning wheel, the drop spindle, the electric spinner. And I'm not very good. I'm still at that stage where everything's very bumpy and chunky. I want to spin my own yarn, because it seems like those people who mass produce the yarn, I don't know, it's like Rumpelstiltskin. To me, it seems like yarn is becoming pure gold. Same thing with fabric. I've noticed, like, you used to be able to get fabric for sewing relatively cheap, and now if you pay $8.99, $6.99 is the cheapest I've seen in some places for some fabric. It's like, it's really expensive. And $6.99 a yard, and you're making something that takes 2 or 3 yards. I mean, I get it. For me, it's about the fun. I can go buy yarn for a sweater and get a sweater's quantity of yarn and pay $50 and $60 for the yarn, where I could probably just go down to Target and get a nice sweater for $20. But you really don't know what it's made out of. You really don't know who made it. You really don't know where it came from. You hear about that kind of stuff all the time, and it's like, I don't know. It throws me off. Why is it more expensive to make your own sweater compared to going down to Target and buying one for $20 to $30 that's going to look similar, other than say, oh, I made my own? but it needs to be cheaper to be able to make your own than it does to go down and buy one. That's the whole point. I don't see when that switched. I don't know at what point in time that switched. But anyhow, that's another tangent. The same thing with cooking. It's cheaper to, everybody around us, and I can say this, I'm overweight. My doctor seems to want to remind me all the time that I'm overweight. And I know that I am, but it's cheaper to buy the stuff that's bad for you than it is to buy the stuff that's good for you. Fruits and vegetables should be cheaper than going to buy a package of cookies. But that's a whole nother tangent of mine. But anyway, as a person who craves Coke Zeros and chocolate and carbs all the time, there's a whole nother thing there. I'm not a yarn snob. So I do know that YouTube is famous for people getting on and making comments about you should have, or you should, or blah, 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 or you don't need to use that, or I can't believe you're using that. I have a friend who can't wear wool, has issues with so many fibers, that has to really watch what they buy, whether it's off the rack or whether it's homemade. So I don't mind working with anything. If I need to make a cotton shawl for that person because I want to make that person something and show them that they're very special, then I'm going to find some way of making a cotton shawl for that person. If I know she can't wear wool, so why would I make her something out of wool? I need to have acrylic. I need to have that somewhere. Yeah, so don't be a yarn snob. Try anything at least once. I used to tell my kids, try it at least once. If you still don't like it, then you still don't like it. So I'm up for anything. You'll probably see more of my drawstring bags or my bucket bags as I make them. This one, I had an old stitch marker that was like a Christmas stocking, and I clipped it on here because the split ring kept catching on everything, and I couldn't get it to stay where it needed to anymore. So I just put it on here to show that I have socks in this bag. And you'll probably see me make some more of those. I've got ideas of doing my paper crafting and my sewing to add to my fiber working stuff. I have intent of making some little charms that look like sweaters to go on my bags like this to show that I have a sweater in that bag. So yeah, just some little cool stuff. So I'll show them off. But I got my first box to work on here, all sock and cotton. Before next time, hopefully I can either cast on a couple of things or have a couple of things done. The cotton is probably going to wind up all being dishcloths, depending on the type of cotton that I have. If I have enough of I know I have some Pima cotton and 24/7 or something like that. And if I have enough, I have a t-shirt pattern that's done out of cotton that I would like to do. So for the summer, since it's February. So hopefully I have enough that I can do that. Um, if I have almost enough, then I can't feel, well, not that I can't. I don't think I would feel too guilty if I can get another skein, although it won't be the same dye lot. Um, I think I would be okay with that. To finish out, like if I just need one more skein or something. Um, my biggest issue is finding patterns that are big enough for me. So I'm a large girl. I'm big chested. So I have a 54-inch chest. A lot of the patterns that I love doesn't go that large. They stop at 48 or 52. And sometimes I can make them if it says that it's going to have 2 to 4 inches of positive ease, but it usually fits kind of tight to me. I like that positive ease too. Um, the patterns that I do have that fit me are the patterns that I do find that run in that size range can be hurtful. If you read the pattern, you're like a 6 extra large. And I don't get that because they're small that they're making is probably like a youth size, teenager size, small adult, whatever. I just wish they would word patterns better. I also want to make things for my children. I have 4 boys, a stepson, and a stepdaughter. And we have 11 grandkids. Yeah, 11 grandkids. And 4 of them is boys, and the rest are girls. And I like to make things for them. I have a couple of guy patterns or unisex patterns that I want to do that I think would be fun. So if I can find yarns in my stash to do that kind of stuff, I still have some smaller grandchildren. Um, I think the younger group would probably be easier to do sweaters for if I have like 1 or 2 skeins of something. Because the youngest grandchild is 4. The oldest is 21, 22, 21. Oh, just turned 22 the end of the month. So there you go. Yeah, so that's my plans. So next time, hopefully I have a bunch of them. Sorry, this is such a talky talk, but like I said, this is the only place I get to talk yarn. I'll be a little more set up next time. Not sure if I want to do one a week or if I want to do, maybe if I want to keep them shorter, I should probably do one on midweek and one on the weekends, but I don't know. Anyway, thanks for grabbing a cuppa and sticking around for me to ramble. I hope to see you soon. Bye.